1,000 years is mini geologic time at best. Once you make geological stability for 50 generations your goal, certain conclusions follow. The first is the correctness of the precautionary principle. We will never have perfect knowledge. We are shooting for as close as humanly possible to zero risk tolerance for the sake of multiple future generations. Given those constraints, it is completely rational, not politically extreme, to err if we must on the side of caution. Environmental risks that might look justifiable on today's risk-benefit balance sheet look far less watertight, if you will, when we think harder about our great-great-grandchildren, and then theirs, and then theirs. A second requirement when we rightly adopt a 1,000-year timeline is to mandate expert third-party consultation into any application review. We already know that mines predicted to comply with EPA water quality standards frequently fail. That is why Dr. Robert Moran, a world-class mining expert, has written to tell you that relying only on short-term kinetic testing or excavating ores with greater than 20% sulfides, no matter what that testing shows, is a formula for saddling Maine taxpayers and their children with lots of future liability. The take-home message here is that sophisticated testing is necessary, but not sufficient to protect against failure. We need to supplement high-tech assays with expertise, even wisdom from people who have been around this block before. Finally, we need our best assurance that scientific evaluations are immunized against political bias, that our third-party consultants be as independent as they are expert. The DEP is staffed with skilled personnel, but managed by appointees of governors who naturally have their own political biases. Likewise, consultants hired by the mining industry can be subject to public skepticism. LD 750 does justice to Maine's need to rationally regulate metallic mining. I urge you to strongly recommend this bill to the legislature.
Thank you. Do you have anything you want to say as a citizen?
No, I will, after listening to prior testimony, I will be submitting my own written testimony.
Thank you very much.
Hendrik Gideons.
Good for you.
I would have been close. Welcome.
Very often it was pronounced Gideonese. I'd like to add ease to things. Good morning. Is it still morning? Yes, it is. Thank you for the opportunity to appear. Chairman Saviello, Representative Welsh, distinguished members of the Joint Standing Committee on Environment and Natural Resources. I've given you my written stuff. I'm going to summarize it very quickly. I'm strongly in favor of LD 750. It does three things. First of all, it obliges us to think in terms of the time frame that we should be thinking when we mess with Mother Nature. Second, it reverses the premise from prevention, or reverses the premise of punishment underlying the current approach, and requires instead the notion of prevention. That's a fundamentally different point of view. And I'll get to my third point is you have three courses of action in front of you. And you are the guys and gals that are going to have to address that. You can adopt the seriously weakened mining regulations that have been put forth before you, and advanced twice now, and I say to you, that's a non-starter. Second, the choice available to you is to try to make corrections yourselves. Ralph has already, Representative Chuck and we've worked together for a lot on a variety of things. He has said that there are three problems with your doing it. You don't have access to the scientific and technical expertise you need. It's certainly not resident here, and you don't have the resources to get it. And he said it also has the problem of denying the public the opportunity, which is ours, to comment on things, because the legislative process, like making sausage, et cetera, there isn't time to do that. He forgot the third one, and you don't have enough time. This is a short session. You haven't got the time to fix those regs. Third option, adopt the bill. And that's what I urge you to do, very strongly. Now let me take a page out of my life's career as a policy analyst. You've heard a lot of testimony here, and a lot of it conflicts, not in terms of views, yay, nay, but in terms of the facts. And you better satisfy yourselves that the facts that have been asserted nose to nose are in fact comparable and either cancel each other out or not. That's a difficult thing to do. It takes time. I used to do a lot of partisan policy advice. I got out of that when I realized that it was just not getting me anywhere, and besides, it wasn't fixing my granddaughter's problem of the environment that faces them. So I focus only on these kinds of issues. Thank you for the opportunity to appear.
Questions? Thank you. No question? I'm sorry. Go ahead, Representative Kimball.
Thank you. You mentioned there's conflict in facts.
Mm-hmm.
Could you expand on that?
Yeah, assertions were made about this has been covered in the proposed regulations already. I would suggest that what needs to be done is to not only look at point by point in terms of the provisions of 750 and the proposed regulations, but that you look at them in the context of is this really a punishment approach or is this a prevention approach, and see which ones balance out, how they fall. And you're the people who have to do it. We can just talk to you about it.
Other questions?
Let me add one thing. I spend about half my time Representative Campbell in Orrington because that's where my partner lives on Paul's Mill Reach Road.
I used to know that too. Other questions? Isn't that so? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
I can get the next name. It's real. I won't blow this. David Smith.
You take the next one, John.
No, I can do the next one too.
I truly am David Smith.
Which David Smith?
Yes, right, me. Yes, good morning, Senator Saviello, Representative Welch, and the committee on the environmental and natural resources. On October 17, 2013, I attended the first of many meetings of the Board of Environmental Protection, which was rewriting the rules for metallic mineral mining in the state of Maine. Let me step back a little bit. I'm a retired school teacher, 30 years of teaching 4th, 5th, and 6th graders in Waldo County. I live in Belfast. I got to keep moving here because I'd like to go back to that if I may, but I may not have time. Since October 2013, the testimony before the BEP and the testimony before the ENRC, this committee, has been overwhelmingly against the adoption of these mining rules written by staff members of the DEP. This includes my own testimony, which is on record. I think in spite of what we've seen just at the moment here before us, I'll stick to what I just said, that I feel that in fact that statement is true. Last year's ENRC's decision to reject these flawed mining rules that in reality allow for permanent water pollution on the mining site, leaving the people of the state of Maine eventually responsible for perpetual groundwater pollution, make perfect sense. They made perfect sense. Then, when this committee made that decision, they make perfect sense now. Now we are told that there is an urgent need to push through these rules. I have to ask, why? What has changed between now and then? I decided to keep this letter brief. I believe that this committee needs time to read over the testimony that it has already received and read over the testimony presented to the BEP. I'm writing this letter in support of LD 750 The Maine people need time to answer the vital question: how does our state wish to deal with permanent water pollution associated with open pit mining? The word permanent was a very difficult word for the BEP to deal with during these, as they spoke and tried and made the rules. But it's an unavoidable word in this case. I cannot close out this letter without mentioning the issue of jobs. Haven't we had enough experience dealing with the environmental disasters, to be able to prevent the kind of degradation to the earth that in the end makes the work we need to survive impossible? I have 5 seconds left. I'm going to read that sentence one more time. Haven't we had enough experience dealing with environmental disasters to be able to prevent the kind of degradation to the earth that in the end makes the work we need to survive impossible? Allowing holding ponds of highly polluted water in the state of Maine will cost us jobs as we are saddled with this permanent mess. Let us be wise and create jobs that we can be proud of, jobs that our children can inherit. Thank you.
You had a story. Could you share with us about your 4th, 5th, and 6th graders? And let me congratulate you. I always congratulate veterans because of their service to the country. Anybody who teaches 4th, 5th, and 6th graders also deserves our thanks.
Well, I know this is ridiculous. You're going to think I'm nuts. But, you know, Popeye the Sailor Man
I remember him. He had
said, I am what I am. And my mom was a 1st grade teacher, and when I get in front of a bunch of 4th, 5th, or 6th graders or 2nd graders, I'm pretty relaxed, a lot more than I am right now. And it's fun. And so I had a wonderful career. But you know, the kind of I am concerned about the public. I am very concerned that the public does not know about what we're discussing here today. I just went to the BEP. I heard about it and got really involved in this whole thing with my retirement because I had time. But I think the public needs more time to know about this issue, and some good old experiments like a 5th grader could understand. The kind I was a 5th grader. I was a science teacher. That's what really made it fun for me. So the kind of experiments that we did in understanding what happens when that sulfur is exposed to air and water, it's pretty drastic. And okay, that's to answer your question. Right. Thank you.
Lucy Quimby.
Lucy Quimby.
Good morning, Senator Saviello, Representative Welch, and members of the ENR committee. I'm actually going to read you something that Senator Gratwick wrote for me, and it's brief, and it's the only time that I let him absolutely tell me what to say. Yeah, I wanted him here too, but he had stuff he had to attend to at home, and even I agreed that he had to attend to it.
No wonder he's not here today.
So, my name is Lucy Quimby, and I'm here to speak in favor of LD 750. I live in Bangor, and as some of you may recall, I'm married to Senator Gratwick. A bit of important business first. Senator Gratwick cannot be here today. He wrote that. As a prior member of this committee, he was perhaps remiss when he testified before you several weeks ago by not bringing you a treat. He has instructed me to bring you his absolute favorite cake to make up for this error. It has mint chocolate and a delicious crust. And it was some doing to prevent him from snitching. He hopes you will not like it, so I can bring it home to devour in secret. But given the fact that you may actually like it, I am offering it here for you today to sweeten my message. And really, all I need to take home is the
basket.
The basket.
Thank you. And those in the audience that don't understand is when you come back to a committee that you've been in front of, that you sat on before, you're supposed to pay due respect and homage to that committee by certain treats. and when Senator Gratwood testified, he forgot. But you have to pass this on. He still hasn't given us any treats. You have. So he still owes it.
No, now he owes me.
I think you're right. And I'm going to start you all over again. So
Thank you.
We're ready.
Thank you so much. So I'm speaking in support of Representative Chapman's bill, LD 750, because it gives us all an unambiguous opportunity to get it right. As you may remember from the last time I testified, I had an earlier career, about as long ago as the Callahan Mine actually, as an African historian, and was particularly intrigued by a book called How Europe Underdeveloped Africa. This concept of underdevelopment is very interesting, using underdevelop as a transitive verb. Someone or something can underdevelop a country or a region. Maine needs to protect itself from being underdeveloped by outside entities that want to make agreements with us that are not in the best interests of Mainers. The big issue in mining, as we have seen with Callahan, is who assumes the risk. The company that created and operated that mine underdeveloped Maine to the tune of, I understand, $1 million a year for Maine taxpayers, plus 9 times that from the federal budget, which Mainers also pay taxes to support. That is over $1 million per year that could be spent investing in Maine businesses, or saving Maine lives, or educating Maine children. We were robbed of a piece of our future. It surprises me when people who talk with such excitement about cutting taxes are willing to leave Mainers holding the bag, so to speak, if an unproven technology does not work out as predicted. There's another lesson from How Europe Underdeveloped Africa. European rulers and corporations were able to do their underdeveloping of Africa because they found particular interests. Rulers are groups of people who were looking to gain an advantage for themselves, not looking out for the interests of the larger population. Divide and conquer worked. Guns helped, but divide and conquer was important. Are there people here in Maine who fit that description? It's something to consider. Representative DeShane, I have looked up to you for many years as a knowledgeable, respected, and committed defender of Maine's environmental resources, ever since we worked together at the beginning of this century to save Maine's most productive freshwater marsh. I'm sure you remember those days. I was surprised when I heard you had voted for LD 1853 in the 125th legislature, and maybe you remember our conversation about my asking you about that. And you told me not to worry, that our state would be protected by very strict mining rules. The rules we've been talking about in the earlier hearing are not very strict. Senator Gratwood and I read them aloud to each other, and I hope he turned in the list of things. If he didn't, he owes me now. And you, that's what he has to bring. These rules leave Maine taxpayers to assume too much risk. And there is too much risk of damage that cannot be fixed with any amount of money. And having gone over the rules, I actually respectfully disagree with Heather Parent that the rules address the issues that are raised in Representative Chapman's bill. And I also realized today that it's about as clear as mud what would happen if we got an application for a permit today. That's not a good situation for anybody to be in. So I urge you all to support Representative Chapman's bill, and let's get the rules right before anyone digs.
Questions? Just if we could, if he didn't give that to us that I recall.
Yeah, I've got it. I put it in my calendar today because I began worrying about it, and we'll email it to you.
And then I think you also made the statement that he had looked at Representative Chapman's bill, so if he would also give us the specifics about where we're not covered in there would be helpful.
Yes, we're going to do that. He's a co-sponsor.
I saw that.
So we have some homework to do.
Representative DeShane, I think, has a question for you.
I did, but then I was listening to this conversation and forgot it. But yeah, I have the same basic question. I would love to see what the senator and you can come up with that would compare this bill versus what's in the rules already. And more specifically, I guess my question is, if we just passed this bill, do you think that would be now strong enough?
The bill?
Yes. If we passed the bill and the rules were based off this bill, would that be a strong enough framework that you would support mining?
If you pass the bill and you have the rules, the specifics, the rules are the specifics that fill out how the bill is actually supposed to be operationalized, that would be good. I mean, I'm not opposing mining. I'm just wanting to be very, 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 very clear where the risk lies.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All right. I believe it's Lindsay. You scribbled your last name, but we figured it's you.
Oh, well, I'm famous for my typos.
Okay.
Any secretary that's ever worked for me will tell you.
Come right up.
It's even worse with my handwriting.
Yes,
Right.
mine.
Right.
I just scribbled, but I earned that.
Good morning,
Welcome.
co-chairs Welsh and Saviello, Dr. Saviello, and members of the committee. I thank you very much for creating this really critically important opportunity to sort of center in plain English that ordinary people can understand what our policy really is about mining. And at its heart, that is what Representative Chapman's bill, co-sponsored by Mr. Chipman and Mr. Bratwick, does. My name is Lindsay Bowker. I think most of you have been inundated. I'm the famous gadfly, the mining gadfly. But that's my work because we're a public interest research organization. We're not political. We don't work for anyone else. We're self-directed, self-funded for the most part, and the work we do is self-initiated. And since Mr. Martin first brought this proposal to this committee in its earlier version, mining has been almost exclusively the focus of our work. As many of you that have stuck with it through the long haul know from my hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of emails outside of the legislative work, trying to bring best knowledge, best science, best law into the conversation. So the solutions we propose are not always politically tenable. They're not deals that you can take to the floor or take to your leadership, but they are an approach to policy that is based on trying to create the wisest law possible, especially for things that involve potentially catastrophic, non-remediable, non-fundable environmental loss. And that's really what we're talking about here. I don't want to go over too much more in detail. I did send you all this morning by email. Relatively typo-free. I was up until the wee hours trying to make sure I didn't have so many typos as my usual communication. I'll skip over my support for the moratorium except to say that first, always, a statute is never put into effect or allowed to have anything written under it without its implementing rules. That's like rule number one of good government and good policy. And in this case, we have a very serious and unusual condition. This wasn't de novo out of the sky. We had a 1991 rule that was written and refers to and relies very specifically on site of development law, from which mining has been completely removed. Mining is no longer considered part of site of development law. Even the definition has been taken out. And natural resources protection law, where a very different and confusing standard exists. So it's not like the same body of environmental law on which the 1991 rules relied is still intact. It's been decimated.
You need to finish up. I started the clock a second time for you, but you need to finish up. 3 minutes.
I'm happy to answer any questions, especially about block caving, in situ leaching.
Okay.
The main difference here that's at stake is these rules were written to a standard called co-regulation. If you do the exercise that Ms. Parent invited you to do and you go through her list of where she says these things are accommodated, they're not accommodated. a list of past violations and where you've worked at a site and requirements that include everything is not the same as saying if you have violated, you may not apply. So if you go through that exercise, you'll see that DEP has written these rules to a standard called co-regulation. So that's what's fundamentally wrong with the rules. Co-regulation means that you rely completely on the miner, the proponent, for the submission of all scientific information, all representations, for self-regulation and oversight according to performance standards, without leaving any sufficient opportunity for direct oversight, direct verification, direct peer review. The Article 9, which are the particulars, you've got two parts to what you do. You've got the statute, which you cut up and diced, which, if you only look at that general, suggests who knows what, because there's not very much specific in there. The particulars that govern are in Article 9, which is the mining statute itself, mainly in the criteria for approval and in the section on performance standards. Those are the main parts of it. And that clearly calls for an approach that's called a precautionary approach that governs all international standards, there's a lot of work that's gone into how you properly regulate mines. And those, the standard that has evolved is this.
You need to finish up. You've gone 2 or 3 minute segments, so if you could finish up and say thank you, we'll ask if there are any questions for you.
Fine. I would like to answer Senator Martin's question about block caving and explain a little about in situ leaching.
Okay. Please do. Please do. Senator Martin, Representative Martin, do you want an answer to that?
Sure. I asked DEP, so that he'll probably get an interview as well.
Block caving is one of the new the technologies that is coming more and more to the fore in modern mining, as people go away from open pit mining to underground mining. So it's the low cost equivalent of open pit mining. And what it does is it goes under, it makes a big cavity underneath the actual deposit. And then it allows gravity to break up the deposit and makes the material fall. And it reduces the cost compared to a normal, regularly processed underground mine substantially. And it's all about cost to develop these days. So there's tremendous pressure to use the cheapest technology and not necessarily a technology that will achieve the most reliable eventual environmental result. Block caving makes a project basically non-insurable and non-bankable by any international standards, because you cannot avoid subsidence. If you make a big hole under something, you drop all the material, something has to happen above, and what happens is subsidence, and it creates uncontrollable, unpredictable access paths for contaminants off the site in ways that you can't detect or understand what's really happening, because it's fracturing. You're just fracturing the earth. In situ leaching is another approach that's especially been used for gold mining, which is very low grade. The lower your grade gets, the more it costs to excavate, the more material you have to excavate. So you have to find the cheapest possible way of dealing with it. So for gold or uranium or very, very, very fine, low-grade material, in other countries they're allowing in situ leaching, which basically means injecting the chemicals right into the deposit. Theoretically, your statutory prohibition, which by the way is both on heap and percolation leaching, and has been redefined by DEP in its rules to be only that kind of leaching that takes place in outside environments. So if you go through Heather's list, you'll see that there's no match between anything Representative Chapman's bill puts forward and what's actually in that statute. So, and both of these were in my testimony. I submitted all the science, I submitted all the technology. I believe Dr. Chambers even wrote a letter on block caving. I can't remember, but I certainly presented his paper. And Heather Parent's response to me, DEP's response to me, it's right in the basis statement, is they want to reserve the option to do both of these things. So if you look very carefully at what, and I'm very grateful to Deputy Commissioner Parent that she went through that exercise of matching up each one of the provisions in this to what Representative Chapman's bill does, because you'll see there's no match at all. And I thank you again for the opportunity to discuss these important things that have been brought forward here. I hope they do become the main focus of your work session, and I hope they will clarify your intent, because Heather stood right here before you and said all of this is already in the bill, which it's not. But if she says it's already there, then clearly there's no question of intent, no problem putting it right in the statute.
Representative Martin.
Thank you very much. Just reference to your last, I think it's the last page, about the middle of the page, you referred to J.D. Irving's rolling pipeline. That should...
Oh, that's for the Bakken cruise.
Right, but that should be Irving Oil and not J.D. Irving.
Well, they're part of the holding company.
No, they're not.
They're not?
Totally separate.
Totally separate?
Correct.
Well, let me just say, nobody's ever seen the organizational chart. So it's very, very clear. It's not really very clear. They say that. I'll grant you that.
Just check the rules.
Any other questions? No. All right. I'm going to make sure I don't cut anybody short. Thank you very much. Who's next? Hillary Lister. Nick, you're on the list, but you're going to go down with the lobbies.
I thought I signed up for the lobby.
No, you didn't.
I was directed to sign in a particular place.
Since when did you take direction?
Very, very rarely, but the person outside was so nice.
Just check your email.
And a big guy.
Yeah, he was very friendly. He said, sign here, so I did.
Good morning, Senator Saviello, Representative Welch, and members of the committee. Thank you for having us here again for another discussion of mining. I'm here speaking in favor of LD 750. The major reason for support of this, I think, is the process issues that have been brought up before. Due to the fact that there was so much feedback on the proposed mining rules from members of the public, from people with expertise, that was not incorporated into the rules that were represented this session. I feel like this bill addresses a lot of those concerns by creating the necessary time. I also think with a couple things that are pending before the DEP right now, those point to the extra need to take the time and not rush forward in approving rules that could have major impacts on Maine's water quality standards. One issue is the fact that the DEP is currently engaged in litigation with the EPA concerning Maine's water quality standards. Earlier this week, there was a memo sent out regarding LD 884, an act to amend the laws concerning water quality standards. And the DEP suggested that, let me find it here. Due to the ongoing nature of the dispute and the fact that there's ongoing litigation related to water quality standards, DEP is not proposing at this time to amend or revise the existing and valid water quality standards that were addressed by LD 884. The impacts on water qualities from these proposed rules would be much more significant than anything that was proposed by that bill. The other thing that's proposed right now from the department is to eliminate reporting requirements for a number of currently regularly required reports, including those on wildlife habitat, water quality ambient toxic monitoring, Maine environmental monitoring, hazardous waste, and water quality and discharge licenses. Due to the fact that some of the reporting requirements may be rolled back and that the state is currently involved in this litigation, I think anything that allows more time for the committee to really look at all the details of these rules. I don't think there's going to be time enough in the several work sessions this session around this. There's so many bills being proposed. I don't see how the committee could adequately address all of these and get the input needed. So I really urge you to support LD 750, and I'd be happy to answer any questions. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Susan Davies.
She's here.
Good morning, Senators Saviello, Representative Welsh, and members of the Environment and Natural Resources Committee. I'm Susan Davies. I'm an aquatic biologist and was employed by the Department of Environmental Protection for about 27 years. I retired in 2011. A part of my responsibilities there were biological monitoring of rivers and streams, as well as Maine water quality standards. In my professional experience, metallic mineral mining is near the top of the list of the most damaging activities that humans inflict on the natural environment. As an aquatic biologist, I fully expect to see devastating and unmanageable effects of acid mine drainage show up with serious impacts to aquatic life of Maine's rivers and streams under the mining rules as currently proposed. Expert testimony before this and previous sessions of the Maine State Legislature has revealed that the geology of Maine's ore deposits poses a particularly high risk of generating dangerous, hard-to-manage contamination from mining activities. The band of potentially exploitable ore deposits spreads far and wide across the state, making strong mining rules a concern for all Maine citizens and its wildlife. Prevention of problems ultimately costs far less than salvaging a mess after it has occurred. I urge you to pass this common sense moratorium until the rules can be written in a way that prevents irreversible damage to Maine's environment, brand, and quality of life. When environmental impacts occur from acid rock drainage, they are often irreversible in the context of human timescales. If it is technological,